with Charlamagne the God, a late-night show he co-created with Stephen Colbert, not Colbert, as well as an executive producer for numerous television and film projects. Please bring them out on stage with a big welcome.
What's happening, BK? Let me get comfortable. Still Brooklyn, though. I don't know if they might take my coat. How are y'all feeling out there? Tamika, Mallory, how you feeling?
Awesome, awesome. What's up, everyone?
Anita, Kopacz, how you feeling?
I'm feeling blessed.
Word. It is Black History Month, man, so it feels good to be gathered discussing literature, since we know a lot of our literature is under attack right now. So it feels good to be here just to discuss, the power of books. And we know that books have power. That's why they're trying to suppress them and keep some of this information from us. So let's have a great and lively discussion today. Tamika, I'll start with you. Tamika was the first release off my book in print, Black Privilege Publishing, through Atria, Simon & Schuster with State of Emergency, How to Win in the Country We Built. Tell them about that book, Tamika.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for choosing me. I always say that, if I was advising you as your friend, as we are, I would have told you to go get a superstar and make them the first released, right? And it would have been, I would have supported it, and really, I would have been able to understand as someone who's starting out in an industry where Black folks have to fight really hard to be noticed and to be successful. I would have been 100% behind you choosing a huge name. And so to be the first, I'm very, very proud. And I know that we made history together. And for you to support my vision, I appreciate that, because, there were some folks who were like, you're going to have Cardi B and Dr. Angela Davis as the forward together in the book. And those folks who I told before I mentioned it to you said, no, not a good idea. It's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. Forwards are supposed to be one person, writing about the material and the author, not two people in conversation. That's not how it works. And then I text you one night and I was like, this is my idea. And you wrote back, dope. I love it. So already we were off to a start of doing things differently. And I appreciate that. And State of Emergency really came about because after the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, I was in Minneapolis, and I was sitting in my hotel room overnight. No one slept. Obviously we were all up. After the video came out, people were all, so upset. And I was watching the news shift from, this is terrible. How could they do this? Policing in America has to change. And before the night was over, a fire was set here or there. A few things broke out, some glass, some kids, whatever, what they call rioting. And then the news by about 5 or 6 in the morning shifted towards the thugs and they're tearing down property, and the cops should go out and lock them up. And it was like, really, it shifted right in my face. And as I watched it, I was already angry. I was already broken. But then when I saw them trying to shift the narrative, it really upset me. It enraged me, actually. And when I stood up to speak at a press conference that happened that afternoon with a lot of folks, Jamie Foxx was there, lots of activists and leaders came together, I just said what was on my heart. I didn't say what I prepared. I didn't think about being politically correct. I spoke out and said, I don't give a damn if they burn the whole town down. They can burn down Target and everything else. That Target should be in the street with us protesting about what happened to George Floyd. And it resonated with people all around the world, so much so that I was speaking on Zoom so often. And I just have to say really quickly that I made it to Minneapolis. I was supposed to be going back to New York after being with Breonna Taylor's family. So for the first time, I was with her family that weekend, Memorial Weekend. We were there with her because, you know, Breonna Taylor worked in the healthcare industry, and our idea as creative organizers, if you will, was to try to bring attention to her story because no one was talking about her 2 months after she died by, making it a Memorial Day story. And so that's why we were there. And as we were leaving the hotel, packing up to go back to the airport, we saw the video, or people started, passing the video around in our vehicle. I don't watch those videos, but the other individuals, my son, who's also your friend, and attorney Angelo Pinto, these are two black men that started crying in the car. And we decided to drive 10 hours or something from Kentucky to the scene in Minneapolis. So I'm already fired up from that. And then this incident happens and the media coverage. And so I said whatever I wanted to say. I didn't worry about who was going to tell me, you're inciting violence and all of that.
So you was on CNN.
And yeah, CNN, they cut the speech right as I was hot at that time. In fact, Linda Sarsour, one of the co-founders of Until Freedom, she was filming it, and when I started saying the Target stuff, she was like, "Oh shit!" like this. She's like, She was on live, and she's like, "I really want to cut this off," but she didn't. And by the time I got off, I went from 250,000 followers on Instagram to 1 million people in just that quick time. And so folks were asking me to speak so much, so there's racism, what kind of race? Like when you say that. Break it down for me, how, and so I got tired of explaining myself, and people said, you need to write it down, write it in a book. And I have to just tell this last story because this is important, and I won't talk as much as I always.
We're here to talk, Tamika.
Yeah, but, I can really talk. But, every publisher, everybody reached out to get this book. It wasn't just one or two, it was a lot of people. And similar to me saying that I would have supported Leonard choosing anyone to be the first release of his imprint, he was supporting me saying, yo, go with whoever you feel you need to go with that's going to pay you right and treat you right. And it ended up that there was someone else that was trying to offer me more money. And I was like, nah, if you're willing to do this with me, I'm going to come to you. And so I took a cut in pay to be able to be with my brother. And I think that that's what the real story of State of Emergency is all about.
That's very true. Anita Kopacz. Author of Shallow Waters, A Love Letter to Yemiya. What made you want to write that? What was that inspiration?
So I was inspired to write this because one of my best friends when I was younger, his name is Lee Thompson Young. He was within the religion, the Ifa religion, and he told me about Yemiya. And he said that Yemiya is an Orisha, somewhat like a goddess in the Ifa religion, and she was a black mermaid who watched over our ancestors as they came over the Middle Passage. And I was like, wait, we had a black mermaid that watched over us, and how come we don't know about it? I mean, obviously a lot of people do know about it, but a lot of people did not know about it. And this was a while back ago. I think I was probably 19 when I first heard about her. And so she has just always been in my heart. A lot of the Orishas have always been in my heart. And so one day the story just starts coming to me. It felt like Yemiya was sitting at the bed telling me the story. And so I was like, okay, I'll write it. But at the time I was at Heart and Soul. I was the editor-in-chief of Heart and Soul. I was had 3 kids. I was a psychologist, right? So I'm doing all these things like black women do. and then at night, late at night, I would write. And it would come to me late at night. But then I was like, you know what? I got to figure out how to do this because this is never going to get done if I'm just writing late at night. And so, I began to learn how to write in front of my kids and just I just started doing things during the day while I was doing other things and the kids were running around. I was like, okay, I can write because I usually like to write with a candle, a Lomar Farms candle burning, and the music on and like, just chill. But this, I wrote in chaos. I wrote it in chaos. And then 2020 happened. And I was like, oh, it needs to come out. And then Disney said they were having The Little Mermaid Black. And I was like, okay, we need to tell the original Black Mermaid story, not have it be like I'm coloring, because I used to color the Little Mermaid books brown when I was little, right? So that's what it felt like. And I was like, we have the original story. Like the first written accounts of Yemeya came out in 1500s. And before that, passed down orally. Back. So like just the original mermaid story. So I was like, that needs to be told. And so I did, and I'm also a believer in deep magic, and Leonard had said something before, not here, but he always says you can't come to him unless God has come to him first, right? Like there's literally that energy. So what happened was we have a mutual friend, Yadi, and I had finished the book, and I was like, Yadi, I need to get this book out. I'm going to self-publish it. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was like, I do not know how to self-publish, but I know I need this book out now. And so Yadi either goes to the ocean or was in the shower. We still don't know. She was in water, and she says, Yemeya, what does Anita need to do with this book? And she heard, give it to Charlamagne. We didn't know he had an imprint. Nothing had happened at that point. So she sends it to him in 2 days. He called me. He was like, don't give it to anyone else. He's like, I want it, and this needs to happen here. So, we found out right away that there was an imprint. So it was very magical to me, the whole process.
Both I got to tell you how God works, right? Both of these books came to me in a divine way because, when I launched Black Privilege Publishing, I didn't have any idea of, who was going to be the first book, who was going to be the second book. Tamika called me one day and asked me, did I know a book? Was it a book agent? I think it was. You said the.
No, I wanted you to advise me on what was happening.
Yeah.
A lot of calls coming in.
Yeah, and you told me the name of the company,
It was the people that did The Coldest Winter Ever. I was asking you about them.
That's what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember the story like that. Hold on now. Okay. I just remember you asking me, and I didn't know who the company was at the time, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, the person that is part of the company, Margaret.
No, I don't remember. It wasn't.
Oh, okay. Well, long story short, that person had hit me about Tamika's book as well, and asked me what I would do that, and Tamika had just hit me about a book, and I'm like, well, yeah. Of course I want to do my sister's book. And then Anita just explained to y'all with Yadi. Yadi is a sacred purpose coach of mine, like a spiritual psychiatrist, so to speak. And it was the same thing. Like, she said that she didn't even know I had a book imprint. And she said God told her to bring that to me. So when I told Anita, I'm like, Anita, just, hold on for a second. We're going to make this happen. And we made it happen. Yes. Those ended up being the first 2 releases from Black Privilege Publishing. So both of y'all wrote y'all books in chaos, right? Where did you have time to write a book, Tamika?
Oh, my people that are here, Brother Hassan and Natasha Williams know, Councilwoman Natasha Williams. Make sure
Yes.
Hey.
Stand up, Natasha.
Natasha.
I do things like turn hot mics off. Every time I'm around the microphone.
You sounded like the mic was on the whole time.
It was, but I just turned it off.
Oh, okay.
I do that. Sorry. So I wrote my book basically living in Louisville, Kentucky, because it was COVID, right? And my mom just had a stroke. And please pray for my mom. We lost her brother this morning.
Oh.
And so and the reason why that's significant is because my mom was a dancer who had about 7 dance classes that she taught 3 times a week in her community. And she had a stroke in early March of 2020, and lost capacity on her left side. And so her dancing life was cut short. She's back doing something like this right now, though. She looks really good. But I couldn't bring COVID back and forth in the midst of a fight for Breonna Taylor's family, we were in the middle of a lot of different issues across the country. There were, I think people feel like because they're not seeing names and faces on TV that things are not happening. We're always engaged in struggle. And so we were out. It wasn't necessarily Breonna at this time, but there was different fights that we were involved in. And as we moved around, I was concerned about bringing COVID back to my family. My son was living in the house, and so I didn't want him to catch it. He needed to be there with my father to back him up and to support him. My sister is a nurse. She didn't need to get it from me. And then, I just couldn't, I wasn't good. I was radioactive. You're around too many people. So once we got to the point where we committed to living in Kentucky to help with the struggle for justice for Breonna Taylor, I knew then, we were at protest. We all moved. We moved everyone we were supposed to be there for 30 days, and it ended up being 4 months. So during this time, we're in Kentucky. We're out all day in major battle. Like, people are living in the street. If I could take you to Kentucky during this time, there was a place called Injustice Square Park, which was right outside of the precinct. And it's, like any little park that downtown, in this area, wherever. These people set up tents, the protesters. They set up Tent City and were living there. So it was command central that we would go to every single day for whatever. Sometimes it was just singing, dancing, but most of the time it was to get prepared to hit the streets of downtown Kentucky, shut down highways, and be in the protest. So as we're doing this, I have time scheduled that I have to leave and have security take me back to the house so that I could get on the phone and write and do research and all of this. I would cry. Literally, like, this is insanity. It is not fair. I had all the breakdowns. But the thing I realize now is that I was pouring into this book something that was happening in real time.
That's right.
Because I'm talking about allyship, which means that some white person has pissed me off that day. Like, I got back and was like, I need to write this down because we need allies. We need accomplices and not allies. Like, I don't need you to come and pat me on my back and make more problems for me during the march. I need you to put your body on the line. And I remember having an argument with a white person in the middle of a protest on one particular day because they just were not doing right, and I was so frustrated. And that made it to the pages of the book. And it actually is one of the chapters that I'm asked about the most when I'm on the road. So much of the content that's there is me living in this house we had 4 homes, and I'm living in between all of these spaces, hosting activists from around the country. And I'm working with them, being the leader, ultimately making decisions, and then having to go to my room and sit and do my writing because nobody would allow me to miss the time, that I'm supposed to be writing. It kept me on my toes. It made me a thinker, right? And it made me disciplined in the midst of the movement, that I was able to not just protest, but also transcribe. And so it was reflect and cry and be upset with the world. And it came out on the pages of State of Emergency, which, not just because it's my book, it's just actually an incredible book.
Phenomenal read. That's right. Anita, I thought somebody was waving. Now, Anita, you hold identity as not only a black person, but you're a black woman as well. So how does intersectionality impact, your work?
So, to me, I believe that black women are God. And
Absolutely.
So it's, I know, I feel like, especially when we're connected to that doesn't mean that everyone is aware of it, as they're walking around. But once we connect to that, there is this awakening, and what comes through us is so connected to our ancestors. Like, there is a direct line from us to our ancestors, and when we open that up, all of the things of us being just the lost children of the diaspora, where we're cut off from our gods, we're cut off from our religion, we're cut off from our language. We're literally still connected. We literally still are our ancestors in our body. And so for me, being Black and a woman is one of the most amazing things in the world. Actually, my son asked me, he's like, if you could either come back Black or white in your next life, what would you be? I was like, well, Black. And he was like, oh, because of the hair, right? And I was like, yes, he's always told me, he's like, our hair is alive. It grows towards the sun. And I was like, yeah, it does grow towards the sun. But, so, yeah, I feel like for me, for us to remember who we really are, that's literally the only step we need in order to step into what it is we came here to do, right? I love to set intentions before I go into a space, especially a space with so many amazing people. And so my intention, I was feeling it already when I came here, is that when we walk out of this space, we are all going to know exactly what it is that we need to do to get to our next step, and we're going to do it. We're going to take that action. And so just setting that intention, and when we know who we are, it just comes through. More questions.
Word. I'm reading questions that they gave me. I love this question. What do you think is the value of having a Black-led publishing imprint? I mean, for me, I'm from South Carolina. And, you know, South Carolina is a place where it was illegal for slaves to read and write, you know, but now you have a native of that state who has a book imprint, and we are indeed writing, and we're telling, you know, our own stories. So that's the value for me. Oh, this is a good one. Misha J from Brooklyn, New York says, what is your, okay. Brooklyn gonna rep every time. What is your take on the relationship between storytelling and transformation?
Oh, I mean, right? Transformation. I was just thinking about when we talked about the chaos of what we experienced while in Kentucky and writing this book. The first 3 days that we were there was literally helicopters over our home, like Black Ops helicopters that were there trying to scare us. Like, we have photos that Brother Hassan has in his phone of us sitting on the edge, the curb of our house. We all left out of the house to sit outside because there were about 500 police cars. Am I exaggerating when I say 500 police cars on our street circling the house. Security found in the middle of the night men in the bushes. We were dealing with tanks, literally with people. And by the way, in Kentucky, I don't know why people in Kentucky can have such big guns that are not even law enforcement. But I was literally walking with people. And by the way, the Black folks have the guns too. So I was like, between Ray Ray with his gun and Miss So-and-so with his gun too.
Is Ray Ray on your side though?
Ray Ray was with me. I felt a little protected, but it's scary. And unfortunately, Ray Ray now has charges that still have not been dropped. Several Black people in Kentucky have charges that still have not been dropped because they, I think they should be dropped because we know that the officers lied, right, in order to invade Breonna Taylor's house. So at the end of the day, it should be dropped against everybody, but they didn't do that. So there are still people who are facing criminal charges for having weapons and pointing the weapon in different directions or whatever. But we were in the middle of that. When someone says white lives matter, it literally hurts my soul because I know what it means, because there were people with guns to our heads telling us white lives matter while we were saying Black lives matter in these marches and protests. But transformation to me looks like they told us no every step. The city said nothing happened to Breonna Taylor that was illegal. The attorney general lied. Daniel Cameron, he went and the jurors said it, not Tamika Mallory. The jurors said this we did not get an opportunity to indict anyone for killing Breonna Taylor. It is a lie that we all collectively made a decision that there were no charges. We wanted to indict. We were ready. They said that it's 4 jurors, I think, came out afterwards. He told us no. Attorney General has Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, drive. The one thing that was asked was one request. When they got the call that the jury was finished and the grand jury was going to come back with their announcement and their decision, the lawyers called the Attorney General's office and said, do not have Tamika Palmer drive the hour from Louisville to Frankfurt, where the grand jury was in session, to have her hear bad news. Just don't do it. They made her come anyway. Got her there, told her nothing. Told her the walls, that the person who shot the walls was the only person who, at that point, would suffer any consequences. She vomited on her way home, cried on her way home, almost lost her mind. These are the types of experiences that we had. Everybody told us no. People told us to go home. Black folks told us there's too much marching and protesting. People got arrested. But we lived to see the time where we put so much pressure and we would not allow it to stop until a black woman, the first black woman that we know of, Attorney Ben Crump says all the time, we've been looking through the history books. There is no other black woman that has received federal indictments for officers responsible for abusing and or killing them. Breonna Taylor would be, from what we can find, she would be one, and if she's not one, she's 2 or 3. It's not many. And we did that. We did that because we didn't stop. Right. So that's what transformation looks like.
What about you, Anita? What's the relationship between storytelling and transformation?
Well, to me, just even as the storyteller, there's so much I imagine there's a lot of writers in this room as well. There's so much transformation just inside of us when we're writing the stories. And for Shallow Waters, that was a medicine story. So it was literally about Yemeya transforming. I mean, she transforms from a mermaid into a human, really, you know. But there's so much about transformation within storytelling. I think that's the most important thing, because that's the whole point of a story, is to move from one place to another. And transformation is that huge, middle of that story and coming into the end. And so I feel like it's a part of it. It's wrapped up in storytelling.
Somebody wants to know, Anita, why sci-fi?
Why sci-fi? So for me, my favorite author has always been Octavia Butler. And I mean, I ate up her books when I was younger, ate them up, and it was the only one that I could find. And my sister will tell you I've always been a very magical mind, just always making up stories and figuring things out. And one thing Octavia Butler says is, like, if you don't see it, write them. Write those stories, which I'm sure a lot of people have said, but write the stories with you in it. And to me, I think that, what was it? It was, I won an award for some sci-fi thing, and I was telling my dad, and he was like, sci-fi? He was like, your book is not sci-fi. I was like, Dad, it is. But because one of the things I love to do with stories is make that science fiction feel real. Like, oh, when you read this, you're like, oh, yeah, that definitely happened. It happened. She came and she was a part of this. And, bringing in the humanization of the goddesses, it just makes me remember that I'm a goddess myself, and hopefully other people.
Tamika, I love this question for you because, we've been talking about the chaos, that you was going through while writing the book, or the chaos that was around you. But what was your favorite part of the writing process? Was there any good parts of it?
It was my favorite part.
Finishing it.
Right. Hello. No. My favorite part was the completion of the foreword, the conversation between Cardi B and Dr. Angela Davis, which, Anita, you put me in the mind of Dr. Davis so much that sometimes I just stare at you. Like, wow.
Oh, my
It's amazing.
Thank you.
I found myself doing that just a few moments ago. But, you know, so in my life, I am what people look at as being unconventional, right? Like, I have made sure that folks know that you can catch me twerking in Louisville on the same nights that we were protesting, right? Like, we finished, and then we were like, where's the spot? And because it got to be some joy here,
Find
like
joy.
somewhere. You
Gotta
can't
find pockets of
can't
joy.
just be stressed all day. Can't do it. I mean, you know, and I, my friend Hassani Pratt, who's here, knows that I literally live by it. I live by making sure that people know I might be in booty shorts, but I'ma still be there. I promise you, I'm showing up, but just don't put me in a box of trying to make me feel like I have to look one way or do things a certain way in order to be authentic in my work. I don't believe in it.
Right.
And so when I was getting when we were writing a book, I'm thinking, I need two people at the front. Like when you open the pages and smell the beautiful smell of the book, I need you to know who I am off the bat, right? I need you to know. And I wanted Cardi and Dr. Davis to have that conversation because people romanticize, and I would say that's the fact that we have social media now and didn't have it at a previous time has done sort of a disservice for history, right? For recalling history. Because one would think that Dr. King and others, they didn't have a good time. You know, they didn't say curse words. They didn't drink or whatever. And I'm not saying they did. So I'm just saying I know some folks who
Dr.
definitely
King had a good
did.
time.
Dr. King, he had a good time.
He had a good time.
He had a good time. Okay, that's what they say.
That's what
But
they
I
say.
just don't,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want Dr. Bernice King being upset with me. But anyway, some movies that they anyway. So you don't see it because there's just no way to know, right? And they did a good job of keeping their private life private, and that's wonderful. But that's just not my way. My audience that I'm going for, I'm not looking for my mother's age group or people who think like my mom. My mom is a radical activist. I'm not looking for her. That's not my target audience. I'm trying to get strippers and former or current dope boys to follow my work.
Word.
Right? That's my audience. That's who I'm targeting. So I put Cardi B and Dr. Davis together, and they have this. If you don't read anything else in the book, get it for the forward. Because Cardi B is like, yo, Dr. Davis, bruh, when I pull up, I'm saying anything. I look crazy. Not crazy, but you know what I'm talking about. I might be twerking. I might be cussing. I'm carrying on. But I love black and brown people, right? And I want to know, is there room for me at the table next to you? Can I sit with you in this fight for this struggle for justice? And Dr. Davis waited to respond to Cardi. So in the process, she refuses to write one word until she hears exactly what Cardi has to say. And so she writes back to her. And in her response, she tells her, you have the power to bring people to the table that I can't bring. Don't change who you are. Just make sure you use your voice to uplift Tamika's voice and to make space for the conversation about justice and equity and fairness. That's your role. She therefore tells her a story that I'm not going to tell you all now because you have no reason to go out and get the book.
Books
but
they're out
you're
in
gonna
front
get the
too.
book. Okay, so then you're going to get the book. So she tells a story about Nina Simone. And at some point, I guess you could visit someone in prison and go in their cell. I didn't know that. But Angela Davis was in Nina Simone's cell. And she's telling the story of how, the other way around. Nina Simone was in Angela Davis's cell. And Angela Davis has all these books in there that she's reading while in prison. And so Nina Simone says to her, you read all of this? She says, oh my God, I'm not ready for this movement. It's no way. I've never read any of this. I don't know this content. And Dr. Davis tells her, stop. What you do is almost more important than what I'm doing. These books, this is not the only answer. You keep doing that forging your path and making way for me to bring the education about what's in these books. And that story for me is the most powerful part. That was the best part of the book because I got an opportunity to tell people, never mind what I may be doing over here and how I look and, you know, my hair and I don't wear the suits and all of that. Never mind that. I'm in the fight. I'm in the fight. And if you join me in the fight, you can be who you are, I can be who I am. And together, we can fill up this road towards justice together.
Word.
Yes.
Word. This is from Amory. Amory, were you ever afraid to publish your ideas? Anita?
Let me think. So I think, was it my mom? Someone said to me, never be afraid to put your ideas out there. For me, I think there might have been a moment where I'd be like, oh, what if someone steals it? And it was like, no, I have an infinite well of ideas. And if I put something out there and it's stolen, they can't do it as good as I can. And so it's just... You know, there was a moment of a bit of fear of putting things out there, but not with this. Well, that's not true.
What were you afraid of?
So I actually was a little bit nervous. Like, I wanted to make sure that I gave Yemeya the respect that she deserved. And I wanted to respect the religion, respect people in the religion and the diaspora, all the people who follow her. And so I was a little bit nervous about that. And it was received in such a beautiful way. So I
had imposter syndrome. Like, who the hell do you think you are that you're going to try to tell people how to get this country to the next level and like how to repay black folks for what we've experienced or Africans here in America. I had a moment where it was like, you're only 41 at the time, 40 years old. You don't know. Like, what are you talking about? But then I knew. I did know. So I think that's true that people do have fear of putting their ideas out. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I don't know if it was fear. It was more so tenderness, especially around the second book. Because, my second book, Shook One, it was just a journal that I was keeping, when I first started, going to therapy. And so I thought that I could explain to people what my therapist was telling me I was going through, but I couldn't. I wasn't able to share that with people just because I wasn't able to properly process it. I was still processing it myself, so I wasn't ready to share it with people, but I could still tell people, the experiences that led me to therapy and the traumas that led me to therapy. And then I brought an expert in, Dr. Ish, to give these clinical correlations in Shook One. So it was the tenderness of revealing those moments that I was revealing to my therapist that I think, gave me fear around, putting out the second book. But it wasn't that I was afraid to publish it. I was afraid of what the reaction was going to be. Because, when you got to go out there and promote a book like that about anxiety and panic attacks, and you're literally backstage at these TV shows having panic attacks before you go on stage. But I guess to even what Tamika was saying, when you were in the midst of the chaos, writing about the chaos, it reflected in the pages of those books. So for me, when I was having those panic attacks, at those shows or at events like this, when I got on that stage, I was able to really express what I was, going through. So, and it resonated with people. So don't ever be afraid to publish your ideas. And I guess more importantly, don't ever be afraid to publish your fears. What mistakes have we learned from during these processes?
Oh, man, what mistakes? I mean, scheduling is important, I think, and this is super technical stuff, right? Like,
I'm in a Schuster like, yes, it is, Tamika.
They know. But listen, I've been on time with some things lately, that's all I'm going to say. So I don't want, Nick, don't, me and Nick is all right. Okay?
Second book on the way.
So scheduling is important because none of us really you don't really feel like doing it because all of the things you said. you have fears, you have doubts, you're like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, all this, and you have work and life and everything. But and when you set a schedule and you're disciplined to that, it helps you to really sit down and focus on what you're supposed to be doing. That for me has been really important because I have all the ADHD, I have the anxiety issues, I have everything, and I will find a reason to not do something that I'm supposed to be doing every day. So I think that is, and then I argue with Charlamagne on the text message about 15 issues a day. So I'll get into that to avoid doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's a book within itself.
That's a book within itself. All the text chats that I'm on, right? But I think that's one. And two, I think let it flow, right? For me, I worry about, like in this memoir, I'm really struggling, which I told you the other day. I'm really struggling because I don't want to hurt or harm anyone telling my truth. So I'm trying to be really careful, and it's a problem because some things is just what it is. It happened, and I experienced it, or they did it to me, and I felt it, and it was an ouch, and I want to tell it, but I'm going through everybody else's emotions and how they will feel when they see in the book my experience with them. And so that is getting in the way of me putting out what I want to put out. So now at the end of the process, I started figuring out that I just had to tell the story. And then allow for in the editing process to figure out what is TMI, how will my parents be impacted, and do that later. But just tell the story and let it flow. I think that makes it easier than trying to overthink everything as you're writing.
Is it feeling more effortless?
Is it feeling more effortless? It's getting better because I'm pushing myself. Because I also know that the book needs to be good, right? It needs to be good, and it needs to be true. Because the other thing is, as we get older, I don't want to be somewhere and someone's like, yeah, and you said this in the book, and I'm like, no, that's not exactly how that happened. I want to be honest and authentic about my experiences and what has happened in my life. And so I don't know if it's getting easier, but I'm definitely feeling better about, like, my story is my story, and whatever role you played in it is just I can't help that,
Anita, you're working on new literature. What mistakes have you learned from?
So I feel like it's the same type of thing as schedule. Oh, you know what? So for me, certain times when I get feedback and notes, sometimes it makes me freeze. And there's some people who know how to really give feedback, and it makes me feel like, okay, yes, let me do it. And then sometimes I'm like, everything I do is shit. Right. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't write. And so I don't know how it's a mistake, but I feel like, moving forward, really getting to that place of knowing that, the flow, right? Like that this is not just coming out for me, it's coming out for everyone. And just understanding that, and knowing that these notes are coming in to help it, to help the book, to enhance the book. But yeah, sometimes it really, I can't, we're not allowed to cuss, right? I did already.
We all grown, I think.
We all grown. I gotta not let it fuck me up.
All right. What books have shaped us? What books have shaped you, Tamika?
Well, I talked about The Coldest Winter Ever earlier because, not so much. The book was incredible, but it's not so much just how incredible the book is. It's also knowing the woman who wrote the book and understanding her story, that her view of the world was so diverse, right? It was complex, So that for me has been one. I would say that the autobiography of Malcolm X is probably one of the most important books I've ever read in my life. I've read it over and over and over. I've read probably not all of Dr. Davis's work, but a lot of it. And, I read all the Zane's books. Like, you know what I mean? I'm, all the things. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So and of course, there's a lot of other material that I've had to read to prepare in my life. But I think being my parents used to tell me when I was young not to read one type of book.
Word.
Right? They used to force me to read all different types of books. And something like I read John Maxwell's books about management and, how to be a better manager of people. So I read a lot of different content. And of course, I'm always in Black studies, but I found a way to be very diverse so it could keep me thinking, So.
What about you, Anita?
So Wild Seed by Octavia Butler and Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, I think, were the two that were that shaped me the most. I remember when I read The Alchemist, I was getting everyone around me to read it, and I even read it to, not this sister, but another sister I have, in the car ride, because I was like, I knew she wasn't going to read it, and I was like, I'm going to read it to you while we're in the car, and I read it to her. And, it's a short
How long was this
story.
car ride?
Yeah.
It's a short story. I mean, The Alchemist, you can read it in one night, and the car ride was to school, so it was probably about 4 hours, and I read it to her, and it's every single time I read it. That's what I love about certain books. When you read it, you get something else. As we grow, you pick up on other things within the book, so it's like a new book each time. And with Wild Seed, I think it was, again, for me, when I was young, I would see spirits, I would hear voices. I started doing readings for people when I was around 18, and that's not when it was cool. I was like called a demon and all kinds of things. It was not cool how it is now. And so I already felt, growing up in a house that's a very religious household, I was scared, to tell my mom that I'm like, I know what's about to happen, like I was scared to tell her, but I feel like she always knew that I knew. And so what Wild Seed did for me, it made me feel like, oh, it's not just me. Mm-hmm. It's like this woman is having this experience, and it was a place that I could go to and feel like I belonged.
Yeah, I love the question, what books have shaped you? That's different than what you've read. For me, it's definitely the autobiography of Malcolm X, which led me to read Message to the Black Man by Elijah Muhammad. Those are two books I swear by. And it's another book by an author named Akil. It only comes in paperback, and it's called From N-Words to Gods. Very powerful book you can order off Amazon. And I love a lot of Judy Blume. I'm really big on Judy Blume. And that, when I read Shallow Waters, that's what I thought about. Like, it took me back to that feeling I used to have when I used to read those Judy Blume books, but it was from the Black perspective, So that's what made me gravitate towards Anita's stuff. But no, Judy Blume she has really dope work because she puts things of socially redeeming value in her books, but they were in such a digestible way. Like, I'm rereading Iggy's House right now. Because if you read Iggy's House, it's like, yo, this could have been written in 2023. It's about a Black family who moves in a white neighborhood and like all of the prejudice and racism that they experience, but it's told through the eyes of this, little young white girl named Winnie. And Winnie she ain't even tripping off the race. She's just trying to be their friend because her friend Iggy moved out of this house and now this new family is in there with these kids. But Winnie is making so many mistakes because she's culturally clueless. So when she first meets them, she's so happy. She's like, oh, are y'all from Africa? And the family from Detroit is like, I knew you was going to say some stupid. But this book was written in 1970.
Wow.
Think about that. And all of these things are still happening now. So, yes, Judy Blume was big for me. Now, who do you hope your books will reach?
So I'm still in the same place. I'm Keisha and Ray Ray all day. But I wanted the book to be a place where mothers and their children, and fathers could read it together. I wanted the bus driver to ask a college student or a high school student rather, hey, have you read, State of Emergency? And that's working. It's happening. I have families that contact me who are like, we're reading the book as a family, and so that for me is important. And I think a lot of young people, I want a lot of young people to read my book, but I also understand how important it is for younger white people to read about our experience, especially through the eyes of a Black woman who is leading, if you will, in this movement today.
And Dr. Muhammad at Howard, she added your book to her curriculum.
Dr. Muhammad, I mean, there's been, and with shout out to Dr. Muhammad, because she's amazing. But it's a lot of institutions and schools that order the books, and they reach out, even if it doesn't make it to the curriculum, they still find a way. Like we had a teacher send us a high school picture. I sent it to you where she's like got the book stacked up in the closet. Like, we gonna get this information. That's right.
We're gonna read it anyway.
That's right.
What about you, Anita? Who do you hope your books will reach? Well, Shallow Waters.
So yeah, Shallow Waters. Shallow Waters is my love letter to Black women. And but I love that so many other people have read it and have found value in it, but I was writing to Black women.
Anita, somebody wants you to tell more about yourself. Because, you're saying things that I think people are catching on, but, and you said that you used to have visions and things of that nature. Yes, tell people about
Yeah, okay, so I'm a spiritual psychologist. That's one of the things that I do. And the reason that I did that was when I was younger and I was giving readings to people, it almost felt like I was like a poppy show or how would I say that? Like I was in the circus or something. Like people would come like, oh my gosh, how do you know that? And then they come the next week with the same issues. And so it was like, okay, well, I feel like I'm not doing anything here. And so I ended up getting my master's in spiritual psychology so that I felt like I could have the tools to help people transform and move into different places. And one of the things that I work with people mostly who have experienced sexual traumas. And so that is my passion, because I feel like if we haven't experienced it, our mom did, or our auntie did, and we feel it in our ancestral line, right? And it's in the blood, or it's in, we couldn't go sleep over at anyone's house, right? And so there's all of this everything teaches us to be like, oh, no, like just hold our bodies in. And as soon as we really release, all of our bodies do the same thing in pleasure, right? It's like we moan, we move, it's that is something that is universal. And so to me, when we can get ourselves to that place, we're open to creativity, we're open to abundance. All of those things are in the same realm. And so that is one of my passions, is working. I mean, Zero F's Given is actually my nonprofit that helps people of color heal from sexual traumas. It's a day on 11/11. You literally give 0 F's, so it's a day of abstinence in honor of anyone who's ever suffered anything like that.
All right. So, what do you want your legacy to be as an author and content creator?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever really sat with that, and so I'm not going to try to answer the question and just, BS around in here. I have to really think about as legacy. But I do know that I want it to be diverse just as I am as a person, I don't want to always write about trauma. Right. I want to write about things that make me happy as well. And I hope that I am able to convince folks in the room, that to continue to invest in, my vision as it expands, as I grow. So that's one part. But I do want to make sure that in the work that I have put out there, the people are able to see and understand how much, not pain, but how hard it is, not just for victims and families, but the people who are dedicating their lives to fighting in these battles, right? Like, I want those stories to come through so that people will know that the trauma that we experience as a community expands. It extends beyond the families that are directly impacted, but there are people who are out here 24 hours a day living for people they've never even met. You know, fighting for people they've never even met. They're not family members or close relatives, and they actually never will meet these individuals. And yet they're dedicating their lives, and that if there's no other reason for us to like focus on humanity, we should be focused on how do we stop individuals and activists and organizers from living trauma lives all the time, being in the cycle of fighting. They should be living in a place of like beauty and happiness and peace.
Word. Anita, what you want your legacy to be as an author? Creator?
So I would love my legacy to be that I created stories that helped people remember who they are. So.
Yeah, I second all of that. I mean, when it comes to the legacy piece, I never thought about that, but I loved what Anita said. And, you know, for any of the books that you heard us mention on this stage, I just want any of the books that we create to have that same impact on people in the future. I want somebody 15, 20 years from now to be mentioning a Shallow Waters, or mentioning a State of Emergency, or mentioning a Black Privilege. And just as far as being a content creator, I'm at the point where if anything I do only benefits me, then it's not big enough. That's right. So that's the kind of content I want to create. What are we doing next? I saw you signaling me. I mean, okay.
Well, first of all, let's hear it for these three.
Hey.
I say the same thing to all of you, but especially to all of you, and especially to all of you. You're all welcome here anytime. Since we ended on the note of those books, our friends at Greenlight are going to be selling the books out this entrance. And then our guests of honor tonight are going to sneak out this entrance, and we're going to end up in the wing over there. My ushers will lead you if you want to get your book signed, if you already have it. Once again, Greenlight's selling them, so if you don't have it, you go out this way.
Well, thank y'all very much. We're going to go out there and sign some books.
One more time for these folks.
All right.